trolling Senator Elizabeth Warren as a snake, and in post after post, labeling Mayor Pete Buttigieg a rat. Two victims of this tell CNN they were so afraid of the online attacks they faced, they don't even want us to describe the circumstances for fear it would start up again. They both just questioned the politics of Bernie Sanders in a public setting, and their personal lives were exposed and attacked.
Well, just what Nick said, I think that's right. I mean, there is no Democratic establishment anymore. There's not even a Democratic Party anymore. The Democratic Party is a meaningless notion that the party, like the Republican Party, has been hollowed out and privatized to a large extent. There are Democratic elites, and so when we're talking about the Democratic establishment, we're really talking about a number of, a bunch of people that Nick also knows well, which really means Democratic donors.
This is the most important election in the history of our country.
This election is the most important in the modern history of this country.
The election in 2020, without hyperbole, is going to be the most important election this country has undergone in over 100 years. Not a joke.
This November's elections are more important than any I can remember in my lifetime, and that includes when I was on the ballot.
There are just 8 days left in what is the most important election of our lifetime.
Where did you guys come to a conclusion about why Clinton had such a hard time just owning that she did something wrong with the email server?
You know, I know that Russia and other forces would love us to have a debate. This is exactly what they want. They want us to have a debate about the internal structure of Hillary's campaign, what's true, what's not true. And I'm just not going to play that. I'm sorry.
Yes, we came, we saw, we died.
I was the CIA director. We lied, we cheated, we stole. It's like we had entire training courses. It reminds you of the glory of the American experiment.
You know, people have said, if you look at, for example, the heat that ended up around the bend the knee of Colin Kaepernick. Mm-hmm. Many smart people have said it actually was not a thing. The Russian bots started taking that. Really? Yes.
Up and I saw my mom. My mom is the strongest woman I know.
She should
this
be
is
running.
Not about.
If you're like me, one of the millions suffering from pain caused by migraine, Nurtec ODT may help. It's the only medication that can treat a migraine when it strikes and prevent migraine attacks.
Trump and the Republicans lose on Tuesday, and if they lose badly, it's not going to be because of the left, whatever that means. It's not because of the 50 Antifa black mask guys who roam around the United States breaking windows and committing mayhem, most of whom are probably paid police informers.
Most of whom are probably paid police informers.
Rudy Giuliani, there's only three things he mentioned in a sentence, a noun and a verb and 9/11. I mean...
I'm going to try to get through this. Thank you for what you did 3 years ago today.
And I went to Wall Street in December of 2007 before the big crash that we had, and I basically said, cut it out.
And now I want to hand it over to the president of Ukraine, who has as much courage as he has determination. Ladies and gentlemen, President Putin. If we finally beat Medicare.
Thank you, President. Bye-bye.
This version of Biden, intellectually, analytically, is the best Biden ever.
He is sharp, intensely probing, and detail-oriented and focused.
They're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there. And this is what's happening in our country.
I can't do it.
We'll do it live.
Okay.
We'll do it live. Fuck it. Do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live. And thing sucks.
In 5, 4, 3.
Citizens of the internet, it's been a minute since I have been on due to a lot of different reasons, mostly scheduling. Work scheduled me on Sundays, and I like to do Sunday shows. That used to be my thing. Get up and have some coffee and do this, but life happens. So here I am on a Saturday night. Yes, I am that loser doing a live stream on a Saturday night. And thank you for joining me out there. If you are, hopefully, I can provide a little bit of entertainment for your Saturday night if you're at home like I am, or God, maybe you're watching it on your phone somewhere. Who knows? Who cares? There's so much shit going on. It's crazy putting this stuff together too, because I feel like I went to put today's show together earlier today, tonight's show, and I started going through all the stuff. I'm like, holy, this is already old news. Stuff that like 2 days ago, I was like, oh, I got to talk about this next time I go on. It's already like old news now. That's how fast things are moving. And I think that's one of the reasons with the new Trump administration and the stuff that's going on. I'm a little hesitant to be too skeptical of much yet, because it's only been 100 days. I mean, think of Biden, like what happened during Biden's first 100 days. Does anyone even remember what happened during that? Probably not, but let's get into it, because I have 8 juicy segments for you tonight. And this is kind of the general theme of a lot of them. MAGA out-lefting the Democrats. And if you've been paying attention to the news lately or Twitter, a lot of this stuff hasn't reached the mainstream news yet, so far as I can tell. But let's start with what I think is one of the most crazy developments in the new Trump administration. This news that Donald Trump plans to recognize a Palestinian state. Now, this is still not 100% confirmed, but to give you an idea, these are some of the outlets that are reporting it. Wow, that's weird. I feel like it is leaving out slides in my presentation here. That's wild. It's missing slides. I'm going to have to fix that. Anyway, the Jerusalem Post is reporting this, and this is news that a lot of the people that I speak with are a little bit skeptical of this, which they have every right to be. And I'm going to get into the details as to why they're skeptical. Well, I'm going to go into reasons. I'm going to go into the specifics as to why they're right to be skeptical. Let's put it that way. In the meantime, I'm going to export this friggin' slideshow and see if I can get it to display properly, because it's not doing what I want it to do. But this is a crazy development for a lot of reasons. The first being, there has been an interesting kind of dynamic the last couple of weeks between Trump and the Israelis. Where is my goddamn slideshow going? And I specifically Netanyahu. I would start by bringing up the whole Signalgate thing and the Mike Waltz incident, because that to me is kind of where this rift began. It kind of seems like Trump is upset, obviously, with Netanyahu for trying to go around him, or really trying to subvert his agenda when it comes to the stuff that he's trying to do in the Middle East or even in the Ukraine. And if you listen to him on the campaign trail, he said himself that he wanted his legacy to be a legacy of, ending wars. And if you look at the front page of CNN right now, it's all this stuff that's like, India-Pakistan war breaks out. Ceasefire has happened, but will it hold? Russia is ready to talk to Ukraine. But will there be a ceasefire? And now you have this development in the Middle East. And it would be wild if all this came about because he's mad at Netanyahu, but I don't think that's the case. I think what it is there's a lot more in it for Trump if he does this, if he goes the peace route. And also, if you remember, during the election process, he went out to Michigan and spoke with Muslim groups and told those groups he was going to end this war. So I almost wonder if some of that plays into it. I'm just speculating, of course, but let's get it started. I don't know if is my slideshow working? Now it's working properly. This was supposed to be the next slide. So I don't know what's going on with this garbage ass application I'm using, but as you can see, the Jerusalem Post is reporting this. And then there's this Thomas Friedman headline from the New York Times that says the Israeli government is not our ally. And this is kind of this is another just from Bricks News about the Gaza thing. Just in, President Trump no longer demanding Saudi Arabia recognize Israel for nuclear deal with the U.S. So something happened. And, like I said before, I'm going to point a lot of the blame at the Mike Waltz Signalgate incident because I really think that when that went down, and then you saw the results of that too, right? They moved him to the UN, and I got into kind of a back and forth with someone on Twitter about this, and the guy said like, "Oh, you really think moving him to the UN is like a big deal?" I said, "Yeah, it's kind of a powerless, like nutless position when you really think about it. Like, think about previous envoys to the UN. Like Biden's envoy to the UN was Linda Thomas Greenfield. Like Mike Waltz is now the Linda Thomas Greenfield of the Trump administration. So that's kind of the way I saw it. But to get to the skepticism part, I thought this was a really great point right here. And it kind of speaks a little bit to this Thomas Friedman headline here. The Israeli government is not our ally. So this guy says, they are setting the stage for blaming Netanyahu for everything and installing a new leader. Because right now, Netanyahu cares more about his own political survival than the greater Zionist goals. I don't necessarily disagree with that sentiment. I think that's probably the right bent to have to this. However, and I'm going to show you proofs of this, I do think knowing Trump and who he is, it's more about the business opportunities. He wants to open up Iran's economy to the U.S. And to do that, he's got to make some concessions. And the other side of this is he outlined his vision for Gaza. Remember when he was like, "Oh, I could see beautiful hotels," and like, and then there was that like cheesy Trump Gaza AI thing that a lot of people were upset about. I think in the back of his head, he's like, okay, we'll recognize a Palestinian state. We'll do what it takes to get that. And then we can still do hotels and like resort stuff there. And then we have then it's because the way that country has been subjugated for so long, they haven't ever had an actual state. When people call this a war, it's not a war. Gaza doesn't have a military. They have Hamas, which is, of course, the most demonized force. And you can say what you will or what you want about Hamas or what you want to say about them. They are the resistance to the occupation, And I'm not here to argue whether everything they do is just. Maybe it's not. But given the circumstances, can you really blame them for kind of reacting the way that they do to a lot of stuff? So that's kind of the beginning of all this. This is breaking news still. I don't, who knows where it'll go Monday come press conference time. We'll see, because that's how this, if you've noticed, I will give the Trump administration credit for this. It's night and day between the Biden administration. They're on TV all the time. He has cameras in the, meeting room, for the cabinet meeting room. He's on TV signing executive orders. He's out there constantly, like, making himself available. So even if you disagree with everything the guy's doing and you hate his guts, you have to at least give him that. Contrast that with the previous administration, where Joe Biden was like barely wheeled out every once in a while and drugged up so that he could do his UN speeches or whatever. So we're going to move on to the real issues now. And I wanted to kind of start doing these segments each week because I'm not a partisan guy, but because I'm, critical of the Democrats probably a lot more than the Republicans. People will call me a right winger. You're a MAGA, you support Trump. No. And so I want to make sure I'm being even handed here. And so we're going to start these new weekly segments, and they're going to be called, we're going to do basically Democrat clown shit and Republican clown shit. But before we move on, let me show you that last tweet, which I missed in my slideshow here. Trump literally doing more for Palestine than Democrats ever did. Let that sink in. And this tweet says, the U.S. will waive requirements for Hamas to disarm as a precondition for a ceasefire in Gaza. So if this stuff is true, it's pretty massive. So here we go into Democrat clown shit. I like the term clown shit because, especially for these major parties, it really seems like that's a lot of what they push out of their political colon, aka their mouths. But with the Democrats, I was a Democrat my whole life. Well, my whole voting life anyway. And I voted constantly for them. And the reason I hate them so much is because they pretend to be on your side and then go and do the Republican shit. Whereas at least the Republicans, even if, you hate them, they're pretty honest about the fact that they're corporate whores. They don't pretend not to be. They don't pretend to be, we're for trans rights and all that stuff. They just, get on their knees and fillet their corporate donors. But the Democrats have really been on a roll as far as clown shit goes the last couple of election cycles, actually since 2016. And lately what's been going on under the new Trump administration is intense hysterics. And hysterics over anything related to immigration. Like, oh my God, racism. Oh my God, here's a clip of ICE, like, snatching a baby away from a mother, or like, here's this and that. Now listen, there are definitely missteps and constitutional violations that they have made, and we'll get into those in a few minutes in the Republican clown shit section. But let's get started with the Democrats, because they have been absolutely terrible, and just everything that these people do is performative. They have zero real political will. And you see that I asked myself this question, if you're a Bernie guy or a girl in the 2016 or 2020 election cycle, the Democrats at no point after losing to Trump with Hillary and then losing to Trump with Kamala, have they ever done any kind of self-reflection? And the Biden thing is iffy. It's like everyone had to, that was a very particular circumstance where everyone had to stay home and vote by mail. I'm not saying that he didn't win the election, quote unquote, but it was a very unique circumstances. Let's put it that way. So the Democrats, despite massive L's in 2016 and now 2024, every time they lose, they blame the voters. They blame racism. Now America is just a racist country. Oh, everybody's a sexist. At no point do they ever self-reflect and go, hey, maybe we're doing something wrong. So let's start today with the latest hysterics that they're into about there was apparently there's these ICE raids happening. And I saw Jimmy Dore reposted footage of like them taking a baby away from the mother. It looks incredibly staged. And I'm not saying that it is, but it looks like a photo op designed to get people riled up. And all of this stuff does. And I mean, that you saw them doing these protests and everything. I'm going to get into the receipts for, I have valid reasons for believing this. I'm not just pulling that out of my ass. But I want to start by showing you the front page of MSNBC today, because this story about the mayor being arrested was a very big story on Twitter and in a lot of outlets, but I did not happen to see it on the front page of MSNBC. For some reason, I saw some stuff about the Pope and this white woman who said the N-word and conservatives gave money to, so allegedly has been a massive story constantly, because of course Trump supporters are all racists. So that's who's doing this. Now, when I see this kind of stuff, the first thing I think is, okay, just like ADL bots and all this garbage, this is an op designed again to smear people. Who's giving this money? Do you know who she's getting the money for? It could be the DNC giving her the money so they can go on MSNBC and post these articles. A white woman hurled the N-word at a child and Trump fans blamed wokeness. This is like, why are you giving this woman a stage, MSNBC? She's a piece of shit, clearly. And I haven't met any MAGA people like, hell yeah, I went and donated to the, granted, I don't run with MAGA people all day, every day, but I know plenty of Trump supporters. And none of them are out there going like, yeah, did you see that lady that said the M-word to the little kid? I support that. This is clearly a Democratic, campaign tactic, because, why self-reflect? Why ask ourselves why we lost when we could just blame racism or misogyny or, whatever garbage we can come up with. So this is the mayor who was arrested today or yesterday, Ras Baraka from Newark. And this particular headline, if you notice the date, is from January of this year, of 2024. So it's over a year old. But you could already tell that, sorry, not January of 2024, January 2024 of this year. Trump wasn't president in January 2024. So this is from January 24th, 2025. So already they were setting this scenario up from the moment Trump got into office. Newark, New Jersey Mayor Ras Baraka joins Mitchell reports. Andrea Mitchell, fucking Alan, is she's married to Alan Greenspan. Jesus Christ. Look it up. To discuss the ICE immigration raids in his city. So, already they had been turning this into an op, into like, okay, this is just like the January 6th stuff, these scripted events to get people hyped up about, the coming ICE raids and how terrible and racist they're going to be. Now, the thing that I notice about this, again, because, I do not think legal citizens should be deported. And I do believe that even quote unquote illegal immigrants deserve due process. We have a constitution and it doesn't just apply to us. It applies to anyone in our country. And if we are going to, espouse values like that, we don't just selectively apply them to whoever we want to. We apply them to everyone to show that we're the bigger person. That's what I believe, regardless of how you feel about this. So here's how things are going now. No one is safe. New Jersey congressman calls arrest of Newark mayor a clear act of intimidation. MSNBC, fuck you, Trump, blah, 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 blah. Of course, Trump is the devil and, he needs to be treated as such. Any decent person believes that, of course. Here's another one. Armed and masked federal agents wearing military fatigues arrested Democratic Mayor Ras J. Baraka of Newark, New Jersey, while he and several other politicians were outside a massive immigration detention facility known as Delaney Hall. So that is the corporate media narrative that has happened, that's going around in this. So it didn't take long, though, for a social media sleuth to dig up this. Well, I'm sure they probably released it, but it didn't take long for this footage, body cam footage, to pop up. And I'm going to show you that right now. So interestingly, that cop is a woman of color. I thought that was interesting. Clearly, they're trying to make sure they got all their ducks in a row. But obviously, in that city, probably a lot of the police are people of color. Police all over are people of color. And she's trying to calm this. This lady in the red is the state representative throwing a tantrum. And so, look, they're pushing and shoving. So I don't believe that is, arrest worthy. But if I did it, you better believe I'd be going to jail. I'd be arrested at least. So here's what Trump's lawyer, Alina Habba, who apparently is from Jersey, had to say about this. She says, the mayor of Newark, Ross Baraka, committed trespass and ignored multiple warnings from Homeland Security investigations to remove himself from the ICE detention center in Newark, New Jersey this afternoon. He was willingly chosen to disregard the law that will not stand in this state. He has been taken into custody. No one is above the law. So she apparently is the state attorney in New Jersey or something. She's somehow involved in state government there. But the latest update to this episode is right here. ICE releases New Jersey mayor arrested at protests with lawmakers. Politico, MAGA doesn't believe in helping anyone unless they are in their cult. So it's interesting because it kind of reminded me of January 6th, right? If when the Democrats were in power, and the Republicans did protests like this, of course they cheered the boot of the law on anyone, when it wasn't necessarily senators who were involved in that or people with political power. But in this case, it's people with political power. So of course they're going to get the arrest, but he's a senator, so they're going to let him go. Now, with this kind of stuff, I'm kind of torn about it because I'm not someone who supports this type of, police intervention and things like this. But also the problem with our electoral system is we elect people to do things that, they promise when they're elected. And in a lot of cases, they're not allowed to do those things. And especially in the case of illegal immigration, I don't even like to call it illegal immigration. It's really human trafficking. It's really big corporations using, poor immigrants and refugees and asylum seekers to their benefit, more than anything. And so, I don't necessarily support the demonization of these people, but by the same token, Trump won an election running on doing what they're doing. And so to me, it's like whether the optics of it are pretty or not, you don't get to just step in and try to stop it. It's the will of the voters. And, again, going back to Obama, it's like all this kind of stuff was happening under Obama, but it wasn't televised like this. It wasn't made into, this kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Spectacle, right? It wasn't. And you saw this when Rachel Maddow ran those photos a few years ago of the people at the, families being separated on the border, and they were actually from the Obama era, because of course no one in the press covered that stuff when Obama was doing it. But now that Trump's president, it's a big deal. And you're going to see stuff like this a lot, as you already have. But as they actually start doing the things that they ran on, you're going to start seeing these kind of like spectacles. And I'm going to show you this clip now. So basically, the reason that I feel this way, and I know that a lot of this is manufactured and it's all campaign political tactics, because the Democrats will never try to self-reflect and go like, hey, why did we lose? They're just going to keep doubling and tripling down on, you're a racist, you're this and that. Forget the fact that Donald Trump did the First Step Act, which released, tons of minorities from prison who were unfairly sentenced. I mean, there's the idea that he's just a racist, has he said arguably racist stuff? Yes. So did Joe Biden. Joe Biden ran with Strom Thurmond and segregationists and opposed busing, but who cares? He's the blue guy, so he's the good guy. So there's this intense propaganda around it. And these types of protests are manufactured. This whole narrative and these spectacles are going to be a recurring theme, and I'm going to show you why right now. So Mike Benz, if you know who he is, he's kind of an expert on this stuff, and he said this quite a while ago. But check this out. I think this just eloquently sums up where this is coming from.
A challenge to a Trump Electoral College victory. Now, one of the things that they said when they ran back this Transition Integrity Project war game just a few months ago was that one of the things they lack this time that they had last time was a street paramilitary presence, a street protest movement that can provide a patina of legitimacy that this is a pro-democracy protest that can destabilize the country. The last thing I'll just note here is one of the linchpins of their plans in 2020 was leveraging the BLM rioters. They were very explicit about this 13 times in their simulation, which was published amazingly afterwards. They said that taking to the streets was vital because this would be litigated as much in terms of street protests as it would be through the Norm Eisen lawfare. And what they did in the war game simulation in 2020 is the BLM riots had just popped off the week before, so this is early June 2020, and they said, we've not robustly tested BLM's receptivity to a Biden call to take to the streets. We just assume that they would. But what we need to do in order to ensure that they will is resource build them, capacity build them, give them lots of money so that they are dependent on us, so that we put favors in the favor bank, so that they will return that favor by destabilizing the country, blocking highways, blocking transportation systems, occupying federal buildings. That way the Trump world is in crisis, trying to administer a government. So that is one of the things I think they're currently lacking, but you might see that develop in the next 2 weeks.
Oh, and remember.
So that is from, what's the date on that? Can't even see. October 14th of 2024. So that was right before the election. And he just nails it. That's the tactic that they're going to use. This is kind of the tweet that he put out related. All the riots show is how formulaic, astroturfed, and predictable they are. Like, congrats, you proved once again you are nothing but a page ripped out of a color revolution playbook using destabilizing street protests to harm a democratically elected government beloved by its people. Now, beloved by its people might be a bit of a stretch, but I think in large part, it's kind of like the problem that I have with the majority of the opposition to Trump right now is that it's not based on anything but performative nonsense, because all of the stuff that he's doing was done under Obama and was promised by Democrats. The difference between Trump and Obama, or Trump and Clinton, or what any of these people that ran on this, is that he's actually following through with it. And so they're going to do everything they can to stop it, or slow it down, or, obfuscate, which is kind of what political posturing is all about. And I'll give them that. By the same token, the Democrats are a lost party. They're a lost cause. And I'm going to show you this right now just to hammer this point home before we move on. But this is a photo of Kamala Harris at the Met Gala. And the Democrats tweeted this out. Kamala Harris stuns at the Met Gala. And I said, Democratic strategy for the midterms. Hey, did you hear about the lady who said the N-word and got a bunch of money? Also, the Met Gala. Yeah, huh? Israel has a right to blow up women and children and kids to defend itself. That was Bernie Sanders, by the way. But this just reminded me of the same performative nonsense these people do year after year after year after year after year. And here's a great example of the same thing from 2023. Has AOC put forth any legislation that actually taxed the rich? No, but she did wear a dress to the Met Gala that said it. Aren't we so great? Yes, queen. Let's go, girl. God, I hate the fucking Democrats for that reason. And listen, I'm all about go, girl, and yes, queen. If there's like any real substance behind it, if it was like, hey, AOC just got Trump to fucking commit to a Palestinian state. Yes, queen. Yes, queen. Yes. That is what I want a yes queen for, not a fucking dress at a Met Gala. So that is it for Democratic clown shit for today. So I got that out of the way. Now we're going to move into Republican clown shit, because I'm trying to be even-handed here. And there's plenty of it, believe me. Both these corporate parties. I almost Freudianly said, both these corporate potties are full of clown shit. I love that. That could be a children's book. So here's Nikki Haley. As the India-Pakistan war is breaking out the other day. This is from May 8th, so 2 days ago. Terrorists launched an attack that killed dozens of Indian citizens. India has every right to retaliate and defend itself. Pakistan does not get to play the victim. No country gets a pass for supporting terrorist activity. Wow, doesn't that sound like the exact same script with different names rotated in? Does it not? And of course, my smart ass response when I saw this was, new blank has a right to defend itself and we need to sell weapons just dropped, because Nikki Haley is very famously a shill for Boeing, which is a very well-known military industrial complex contractor. So 2 days later, this dropped from Mr. Donald Trump, putting the kibosh on Nikki Haley's plan to sell more weapons. After a long night of talks mediated by the United States, I am pleased to announce that India and Pakistan have agreed to a full and immediate ceasefire. Congratulations to both countries on using common sense and great intelligence. Thank you for your attention to this matter. So this is the thing about Trump that I said even before he got elected. I didn't vote, and I'll say that repeatedly because I have a very George Carlin attitude when it comes to voting, especially at this point, because it's done jack shit for me. But my decision to not vote, especially to not vote for the Democrats, was a great one, because the lesser of two evils in this case is actually kind of proving to be the lesser of two evils. Now, we'll see how this plays out. I'm not cashing in on my chips just yet. But since Trump got in, he has been, at least I see him attempting to do the things that he said he was going to do. Pardoning Ross Ulbricht was to me, a very good sign in this direction. Now, when you get to stuff like issues of war, there is a vast interconnected network of permanent Washington types who are there to hamper you at every turn. And so the brunch lib hysteria and the immediacy to dunk on MAGA, you got ripped off, MAGA, you're dummies, dumb MAGA, see Trump's still doing a war. It's a little premature. And that's what I've been saying all along, because he's only been there for 100 days, and you don't just wrestle the reins of government from those types of people that quickly. But these types of steps are it's moving in the right direction. And it goes back to the Mike Waltz thing again. It's like, that is the kind of tactic that they use. Signal gate. Oh my God, did you see what they did? Make Pete Hegseth resign. It's like, that's the kind of games they play to hamper. Now that he actually won the election, the people voted for it. Those are the kind of games they're going to play to stop his agenda from being implemented. And whether you like it or not, he should be allowed to implement his agenda, because in a couple more years, maybe someone you do like will get elected, and they should be allowed to implement their agenda too. That's how this works, motherfuckers. Christ. So that's the first part of the Republican clown shit. So we're going to keep moving on here to a woman whose name is, I don't want to butcher her first name, but it's Ozturk is her last name. It's Rumeysa. I guess Rumeysa, a Turkish PhD candidate who co-authored a pro-Palestinian op-ed, was detained by masked ICE officers back in March. Not cool. Not cool. Because she wrote a pro-Palestinian op-ed, they're deporting her. Here's another slide, from with the same sentiment, this is from the ACLU of Florida of all places. And they just say, writing an op-ed is not a crime. The Trump administration must release our client, Rumeysa Ozturk, from ICE detention immediately. And now I just want to show you kind of some of the people who support this. Well, one of the people who support this. This is Shai Davidi, the world's biggest Karen. Just a reminder that the pro-Hamas organization, Mahmoud Khalil and Mohsen Madawi of Colombia, started mobilizing on October 7th, 2023, while Hamas was still massacring civilians. It was never about peace or coexistence. And he shows this tweet from Columbia Students for Justice in Palestine. Because guess what, Shai? There was stuff that predated October 7th. Apparently you were born on October 7th, so you don't remember anything that happened before it. But this organization existed before October 7th because this has been going on for a very long time, sir. And I'm being very diplomatic to refer to you as sir, because there are a lot of other more suitable words I could use. Now, just to show you another example of how terrible these people are, they simply make shit up to back up their points. He doesn't have any evidence to say that these people are, they just hate Jews and they just want to kill Jews and that's their whole MO. This is footage of Khalil that's supposedly at a protest. So check this out. So she says, Mahmoud Khalil. Well, let me back that up because I didn't have time to read the whole tweet there. Whoa, what just happened? So she basically says, Mahmoud stood in front of a crowd of thousands of people calling for them to celebrate Hamas terrorists who raped and slaughtered innocent civilians. The same Hamas terrorists who called death to America. That's why he's being deported. So you can see this. Terrible thing. said make some noise. And here you have the fact check, which I think is great. This is one of the best things about Elon Musk's Nazi Twitter. She says, readers added context they thought people might want to know. It says, this is not Mahmoud Khalil from Columbia University who is being deported. This is a different man from Canada with the same name. The original author of this repost has apologized for this error. And I would argue that they don't give a shit. Oh, whoops. By the time people realize that it's not actually him, the rumor has already, traveled twice around the world. The bullshit. So I'm going to show you footage of who Khalil actually is, just so you get a little bit of a background as to who this guy is, because he's not an American citizen, but he's here legally, and he didn't do anything wrong from where I'm sitting.
And raised in a Palestinian refugee camp in southern Damascus in Syria. My family's history in Palestine actually goes back to as long as my grandparent could trace it. They lived in a very small village right next to Tiberias. Mostly they were farmers. My grandmother, she used to tell us that she had Jewish neighbors. They would share a piece of land where they would farm it. Tiberias was one of the first cities that the Zionists targeted in 1948 with ethnic cleansing. In April 1948, a month before the Nakba, the Zionist militias, they burned one of their villages. When they heard the news about it, they had to leave immediately. Some of the men went to fight. Big families, they had to go to Syria. My grandmother, she was pregnant at that time. She had to walk 40 miles. She gave birth on the way. When they arrived in the refugee camp, they thought it's just a matter of days until they would go back. They did not want to be killed because they heard about the horror stories across Tiberias. My dad was born in a tent. His family lived in that tent until like mid-70s when they upgraded to small structures. In the 90s, they finally kind of like had concrete buildings.
You're an anti-Semite.
Always a temporary home until we go back to Palestine.
You're an anti-Semite.
I thought I would take that opportunity to show you guys my brand new Douglas Murray video drop. When anyone says anything even remotely critical about Israel, Doug, take it away.
You're an anti-Semite.
So that is who Mahmoud Khalil is. But, if you really want to know why he was targeted in the way that he was, I'm about to show you. Oh, yes. So here's our good friends, The Last American Vagabond. And they do very good reporting over there. I shouldn't say they're my good friends. Friends of the show. So exactly as we have been reporting since they arrested Khalil, not because we were guessing, but because we did the research, the U.S. government is arresting people, many of them Americans, because Israel asked them to. So this is from, what's this guy's name? Aaron Reichen Melchik. So he says, update, the judge's decision on this came out last night, and it's a doozy. It exposes how the Trump admin stripped a guy of a student visa because Bitar tweeted about him, then issued an ICE arrest warrant for him based on an outright lie just 48 hours after Bitar's tweet. So when you see this kind of stuff, again, and you kind of weigh it against the first story that I opened the show with about Trump now deciding he's going to recognize a Palestinian state, it gives you a little bit of context and maybe a look into the way that they're thinking, because at this point, it seems like everything that these people are doing is to make him look bad or to subvert his agenda. And, you know, I mean, this makes him look terrible. So there is a happy ending to at least one of these stories, though. And I will show you this clip real quick just to show you how terrible this is. If you haven't seen it already, you know, this is the clip of Ozturk being arrested. I think it was in March. All she did was write an op-ed. This person has never committed a crime in her life. So this is absolutely terrible and should not have ever occurred in a country like ours with the rights of free speech, especially to someone like her who is a totally legal resident of the United States and who did nothing but express an opinion that many other people have expressed. For some reason, she was targeted. But this story actually does have a happy ending. She was recently released. I'll just show you this last clip from Boston Globe.
I am a little bit tired, so I will take some rest, but I really appreciate you being here. Thank you so much for all the support online. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Safe travels home.
So Rumeysa Ozturk, whose sudden arrest was by federal immigration agents, made national headlines, walked out of a Louisiana detention facility after a judge ordered her release. So I hope to see the same fate for Khalil eventually. From what I understand, a judge has already ordered the Trump administration to do that. But this is a very heavy blemish on the immigration policies that he's trying to implement. And I do believe that a lot of it is done with the intention of subverting that agenda completely, because, you know, just the optics, if you've seen the video of I should have pulled it for this show, but I didn't. But if you've seen the video of the ICE detention people in Massachusetts taking the woman's baby, and then like people are trying to riot and cause, it's not a good look. And if you're Donald Trump or you work for the administration, like, he should come out strongly against that and say, look, we don't support just ripping people away from their families and stuff like that. But we also have to have a process for this, and we have to be hard line about it. Something like that. He's on TV every fucking day, so he could say something to kind of, you know, and like with the Ozturk story, this woman should not have been arrested at all. And it's terrible that she spent more than a day in jail. It's terrible that she spent any time in detention whatsoever, but at least she's out. At least the system worked. And, you know, the legal system said, hey, and believe me, I'm not one who touts the system, but in case, for the most part, you know, maybe not even for the most part, but a lot of times it eventually works out the way it's supposed to. And so just to close this out, I want to show you what your boy Matt Stoller had to say about this incident. Actually, let me get to that. Because it's summed up nicely in this Matt Stoller tweet. This whole ordeal is very summed up very nicely, I feel, in this tweet right here. He says, anti-Semitism isn't a real thing on elite college campuses, though old rich boomer Jews wish it were, since it gives them a sense of purpose. This Free Press reporter compiled the most disturbing incidents from Harvard's anti-Semitism report. Not a single instance she discusses describes actual anti-Semitism, but rather students receiving pushback for expressing support for Israel's treatment of Palestinians. Oh my God. You people. Asking to see the manager.
Yeah, we here now. Stupid.
All right, so that's it for the Republican clown shit segment. And that's more than clown shit. That's like elephant clown shit. That's a huge pile of clown shit. When you're out here claiming to support freedom of speech, you know, I might not agree with it, but I'll fight for to the death for your right to say it. That used to be how everyone's talked in this country, whether you were a Democrat, a Republican, a libertarian, or a hippie, whatever. But not when it comes to this one issue. This is the one issue where they just suddenly lose their minds. And as soon as you say anything that's remotely critical, you get Douglas Murray.
You're an anti-Semite.
All right, so let's move on to the new Pope. Are you guys pumped that we have a new Pope? Huh? Are you jazzed? Are you as jazzed as I am? Well, you know this guy is. And this reminded me of, I'm a big fan of Bill Hicks, and he had this whole thing about the Pope where he said something to the, I'm paraphrasing here because I don't want to get copyright stricken for playing the clip, but he said something to the effect of, you know, they're talking about having a woman Pope. He's like, have a alien Pope, have a Pope with 3 dicks and 2 tits. I don't care. I'm not going to listen to him. I'm not going to listen to anything they say. This is an organization that, you know, molested children and covered it up. Like, it's disgusting. So I don't give a shit about the Catholic Church, but now that we have a new Pope, suddenly liberals do. So, and it's just wild to me. Like, the same people who hated the religious right are now the religious right because this religious right, I guess, is like Trump is bad. That's all you have to do to get in the good graces of these people. So I wanted to start this by showing you this tweet from famous DNC influencer Joe. She says, MAGA is so upset about the new Pope, you'd think they just watched someone give food to a starving child. And I said, in the modern political space, Democrats and liberals are the dumber of the two corporate parties. And that this kind of proves that. So I want to show you this clip from Matt Taibbi and Walter Kern. And this is a bit of a long one, but it's very good. It's I mean, by long, I mean like 5 minutes. You know, it's not that long, but these guys really kind of
he did like a whole segment.
Okay, so they kind of lay out the hilarity of Democrats and MSNBC suddenly fawning over the new Pope here better than I ever could. So I'm going to play it for you and insert my commentary where necessary.
MSNBC did like a whole segment on it on the insult to the teachings of Jesus and everything.
Well, forcing MSNBC to defend Christianity and especially the Vatican was first brilliant move, right?
I guess so. I mean, I find this funny in every direction. Like I feel like, but let's listen to. I think it's Cornell Belcher is the analyst they bring on. Who
all analysts on MSNBC should be called Cornell Belcher.
That's right. It should just be Cornell Belcher 1, Cornell Belcher 2.
And
right,
Princeton,
all the way up to
Princeton Farter would be another one. Dr. Princeton Farter.
Princeton Farter and Cornell Belcher.
We're welcome now by Dr. Princeton Farter.
Surely you can't be serious. I am serious.
It just writes itself.
Okay.
I'm sorry, folks. We're having too much fun with this. Okay, let's watch and see what Cornell Belcher has to say in this interview.
Thinks it is really cute to pretend that he could be the next pope. So much so, he posted this AI image of himself as the pontiff and doing it while the Vatican and the Catholic world are still in mourning. It is a move that any other politician or public figure would be vilified for. The Catholic bishops of New York State were not amused, saying, quote, "There is nothing clever or funny about this image, Mr. President. Do not mock us." The president was asked about the post at the White House earlier.
I had nothing to do with it. Somebody made up a picture of me dressed like the Pope, and they put it out on the internet. That's not me that did it. I have no idea where it came from. Somebody did it in fun. It's fine. Have to have a little fun.
A little fun. Again, any other public figure, politician.
Somebody did it in fun. It's fine.
Would be vilified. The whole episode seems like another, though, in a long line of would-be contradictions or offenses that his.
Right. And it's so pathetic because everything the Democrats do is just clutching their pearls over Trump. And by the Democrats, I mean like the entire mainstream media and their whole apparatus. At no point have they offered their alternative vision other than like Bernie Sanders, like, we got to fight the oligarchy as I ride private jets and back Bill Gates and J.B. Pritzker.
Religious supporters shrug off. Joining us now, New York Times columnist David French. And back.
That was a piss poor Bernie Sanders. I can do a way better Bernie. The oligarchy. We must fight the oligarchy.
Back with us, Doug High and Cornell Belcher. So, David, you're writing about the Christian right. I know that that's not Catholics, but you do have a line in here that I think is will help explain what's happening. And you say this. Another way of putting it is that the religious right has divorced itself from historical Christian theology, but still holds its partisan.
We should have a contest to come up with names where you align colleges with bodily functions. So you could have like, you got Cornell Belcher and Princeton Farter, maybe like, I don't know, Yale Queef, or what's another good one? Stanford Shart. That's a very classy sounding. Stanford Shart, Cornell Belcher. Anyway.
Beliefs with religious intensity. The religious fervor is there, Christian virtues or not, are not. Explain.
Yeah. Well, what you're seeing in the religious right supporting Trump is, where are you finding Christian virtues in the Trump movement right now? Where are you finding them? How do you see them? They're not there. They're just not there. But what is there is he's giving access to an awful lot of Christian conservative figures. And so they get access. They get to be in the room where it happens.
What David
so
French
they're close
is
to
wearing.
power and they love
What he's
it.
wearing?
But they're not advancing any kind of Christian
I think he should
theology.
zip
They're
it
not
down
advancing
1
any sort of
inch.
Christian worldview. And this Pope situation is really indicative of what we're dealing with.
So now MSNBC and the New York Times are going to lecture conservative Christians on how unchristian Trump is. It's like it's ridiculous. The thing about Trump that I actually enjoy is how kind of he panders to that demographic, but he is not that. He's a fucking New York playboy. This guy has never been a Christian in the purest sense. You know, now that he's older and he's the president, maybe he's a little more serious about it, especially after he was shot at, but he was never that guy. And people like David French don't understand that the appeal of Trump is not that he's conservative, not that he's Christian. The appeal of Trump is that he drives people like David French absolutely fucking insane. He drives people like the anchors at MSNBC actually absolutely insane, because they're all former press secretaries for George Bush and Joe Biden. They will never understand this, and to watch them boviate like this and pretend that there's some voice of moral reason, it's absolutely fucking hilarious.
We're dealing with nothing that's actual respectful to Catholicism at all. He's just playing around with it. He's joking with it.
So what do they believe?
Well,
what is the fervor?
The fervor is very anti-left. There's no question about this. This is where the tech right and the barstool right and the Christian right all join. They're very anti.
Now he's got all these like names for fucking segments of the right that he pulled out of his ass.
Left. But if you look at the historic positions of the Christian conservative movement, placing a high value on the pro-life movement, yet Trump had the most watered-down platform in generations. Placing a high value in personal character.
That's not what they used to say.
Read what Baptist said about character and politicians in the Clinton
I thought Roe
era.
v. Wade was.
Yeah, remember before the election when women had to vote for Trump or they were going to lose their abortion rights? Now this guy's like, oh, Trump has a really watered down platform on pro-life.
And all of that is just gone. It is now gone, and it's about power, and it's about opposing the left.
So it reminds me of the book that Tim Alberta.
Can I just also add that the term left and right are completely meaningless at this point when you have these cunts arguing that Trump is not like religious and conservative enough that he's offending.
Wrote trying to explain what happened to his church in an era of Trump. And
it goes on. He goes on to say,
dude, he turned them all into church ladies in one fell stroke. MSNBC, where atheists explain what Catholics should be offended about.
Exactly.
And there was obviously a somber New York Times story about it.
Right.
Trump denies posting image of himself as Pope, laughing off critics. And then there's the whole subhead about how he can't take a joke. Yeah. Yes, Walter.
Imagine if you woke up.
And the thing I just want to add, the thing that people like David French and the New York Times hate the most about Trump is that with a typical politician, this type of attack would fold him and he'd be like, oh, I'm sorry that I did that. I'm sorry to the Pope and I'm sorry to religious people. But Trump doesn't give a shit. And this kind of thing, like he should just laugh it off because it's a fucking ridiculous premise to begin with. It was a joke meme that he posted.
Up every day with the power to steal 30 inches of newsprint from the New York Times, 15 minutes of time of primetime MSNBC, and a half hour of peaceful being.
Walter Kern, I have to say, like I've been watching America This Week, these guys' podcasts for the last month or two, and this guy just like he nails it. He's nailing it constantly. I love Walter. I'm very happy for Matt Taibbi for bringing him into this because I had no idea who he was until they started running together. Oh, and I just started
the book that Tim Alberta wrote, trying to explain.
Stroke. MSNBC, where atheists explain what Catholics should be offended about.
And there was obviously a somber New York Times story about it.
Right.
Trump denies posting image of himself as Pope, laughing off critics. And then there's the whole subhead about how he can't take a joke. Yeah. Yes, Walter.
Imagine if you woke up every day with the power to steal 30 inches of newsprint from the New York Times, 15 minutes of time of primetime MSNBC, and a half hour of peaceful being from 50% of America merely by tweeting. It would be irresistible to use that power, not use that power before 7 a.m. every day. And yet they continue to go for it.
Yeah, it is a little bit like squid fishing, right? Where you just keep yanking one after another. I mean,
he can say, how shall I program the news tonight? How shall I program the editorial pages of America? And how about the 7 o'clock conversations for the people who have just finished, All Things Considered and are having their first cocktail? How shall I dominate their lives? I can do it with an AI tweet. Oh, come on. Let's see. Yep, it worked.
So Walter,
and that's a fantastic point. I mean, there's footage of Trump talking about on The View. I need to grab this footage, but you can look it up, where he says, hey, they have this new thing called Twitter. It's better than a printing press. I can talk to 50 million people instantly. And no one has better harnessed the power of social media than this guy. And even if you hate everything he does, you have to give him credit, at least for that. So I want to close this out by showing you a quick scroll through your friend and mine, Russell Brand's comments on this. And really, the only reason I pulled this from Russell Brand is just because I happened to see it in my feed the other day, and I wanted to see what the comments were saying. So I just, I happen to have this footage for you just so you can get a load of this. So look at these comments. Catholic, love Jesus, unoffended Catholic button. I'm a Catholic and find it funny. I'm Catholic. This was less offensive than Francis's entire existence when the Olympics made jokes about Jesus. You know, look at not one of these people is upset about it. I'm a Catholic, not offended. We have a better sense of humor than most. I'm Catholic, not offended at all. Catholic here, not offended. Didn't bother me at all. Most don't get the joke. What does bother me is the offensive as self-proclaimed Catholic Biden was. So as you can see, people are not offended by this at all. And MSNBC's pearl clutching and attempt to rally, some kind of a resistance with no substance is not going to work. You guys have proven time and time again that all you're doing is boviating. You literally just go, what does Trump say? And then you believe the opposite. And that is not going to win you any elections in the modern era of politics. I say this constantly, but Democrats still mentally exist in 2015. All of them. It's like none of the Hillary, Bernie, none of the Biden, Bernie shit ever happened. And so when 2024 happened and Kamala Harris got handily stomped electorally and the Republicans won a bunch of seats, it was just such a great moment because the Democrats, they have constantly neglected the left. And now you have a Republican administration that is out-lefting them. And if you don't think I'm serious about that, read Marjorie Taylor Greene's tweets. Listen to Matt Gaetz or Steve Bannon talk. They are to the left on 90% of issues of the Democrats. The Democrats are the right-wing, pro-authoritarian, pro-censorship, pro-war. Let's just dress it up in some kind of like pink-washed nonsense where we're trying to save ladies' rights or in Afghanistan. We're letting Israel murder women and children in Gaza because, gay people are not liked in Palestine or something. I don't know. You figure it out. But that's literally the attitude these people take. And it's just, again, they have no self-reflection whatsoever. At no point do they look in the mirror and go, hey, maybe it's something we're doing that keeps losing. No, it's just you're a racist, you're anti-vax, you're misogynist, or of course, as our good friend Douglas Murray would say,
You're an anti-Semite.
So we're going to move on to our next piece, which this is another piece of the puzzle as to why I think Trump came out and said, hey, we're going to recognize a Palestinian state, or the buzz right now is that he's going to say that. So if you remember, there was a huge ordeal in Yemen recently where Pete Hegseth, and the funniest part about this, the Signal Gate thing was kind of, apparently Pete Hegseth talked about these bombings in a, chat that was leaked to the press by Mike Waltz, leaked directly to Jeffrey Goldberg. For some reason, to subvert this, but here's kind of the genesis of all this. And Adam here says, Trump sent, this is from March 30th, so this is from a couple months ago. Trump sent $16 billion to Israel in 40 days and is spending millions bombing Yemen while America looks like this. And there's a video, and it's, you get the idea. It's not a good look. So I'm going to show you how this ended. Well, how Trump says it ended anyway. And you probably seen this clip, but this is just to set up the next clip. Here's Trump's.
Last night, the Houthis have announced that they are not, or they've announced to us at least, that they don't want to fight anymore. They just don't want to fight. And we will honor that. And we will stop the bombings. And they have capitulated. but more importantly, we will take their word, and I will accept their word, and we are going to stop the bombing of the Houthis, effective immediately. And Marco, you'll let everybody know that.
The one thing about Trump is that he can never take the L. He always has to, and maybe it's the salesman in him, maybe it's the businessman. He'll never admit defeat publicly. Remember those commercials in the 80s for Sure deodorant, Raise your hand if you're sure. He's sure of himself. However, there's a little bit of evidence to the contrary. And keeping with my theme here of MAGA outlefting the Democrats, this is Judge Napolitano, former Fox News host, speaking with Pepe Escobar, who is a reporter. And this is really good. Listen to their conversation.
In Moscow, but before we do, what did the United States gain by bombing Yemen?
One of the greatest humiliations in the military history of the United States. I'm really sad to tell you that. This is the short version. A war without...
Can I tell you something? He's not really sad to tell us that.
Planning against a known adversary, which was basically trying to protect, in their own words, their brothers and sisters in Palestine.
You're an anti-Semite.
These people in Washington, come on, get a history book, study for 10 minutes. You will never win a war against Yemeni warriors.
You're an anti-Semite.
Mediated. When I was there a few weeks ago, one of the members of the High Political Council, he told me, look, we still have our own cards on the table. We haven't shown everything. Now, after 3 destroyed F-18s and nobody knows exactly what happened to USS Truman, we have the circus ringmaster saying they were begging for a ceasefire. No, you, Mr. President, begged for a ceasefire and tried to get away of a war that you never even thought about.
When Trump boasted in the Oval Office that the Houthis capitulated, you emailed me saying it's quite the opposite. The Houthis won in a landslide. What did you mean?
Well, can you imagine numbers themselves? This often repeated number and estimate that Yemen is the poorest country in the Arab world. It's the richest in history and spirituality. It's the richest in moral clarity, and it's one of the more...
The moral clarity thing has been proven because they're literally the only people in the world standing up to this. The rest of the established order has completely caved. So I think he's 100% correct about that.
More powerful militarily as well. They had help, of course, from Russia, Iran, and China directly.
Okay, I want to pause right there. That is why I believe Trump and his better angels, Tulsi Gabbard, J.D. Vance, and co. said, hey, no. Because we are at a point where we live in a multipolar world. And those now that once you have Iran, Russia, and China united against the United States through a proxy like the Houthis, that's a problem. And so honestly, I mean, cheers to Trump for having the gumption and the clarity to go, hey, dude, this is not good. And maybe it took, a couple of fucking aircraft carriers being taken out and a couple of jets being taken out. Fuck around and find out. That's what you have to learn. But again, the propaganda that we're served up is so ridiculous. Even on Twitter, the stuff that I saw around this, and this is a guy who's been on the ground, documenting this stuff as a reporter. But most of the stuff you saw, even on Twitter, was like, oh, the Houthis fucked around and Israel bombed their airport. They fucked around and found out. And then you realize, no, that's all just pro-war propaganda nonsense. The reality is name a war that we've been involved in the last 30 years that we actually won. Name it. It doesn't exist. And the reason why is because I go back to the moral clarity thing, probably because he used that word, but we haven't had it. Maybe in World War II we had it. I wasn't around back then, so I can't say for sure. Based on the history, it seems that we definitely did, and Russia was on our side and helped us in that battle. So it's my whole line of thinking has been completely altered over the last 5 or 6 years, where maybe it was the pandemic that really socked me in the sternum and made me go, nothing I know is right. Question everything, unlearn. But let me let Pepe finish here, because
and indirectly, but their military accomplishments are their own. So, and on top of that, they know exactly how to use their military power. They did not attack anybody. What they did was to protect Palestinians their own way. And the lands of Islam as a whole supported Yemen from the beginning, and most of the global south as well. And now they have forced the mightiest armada in the history of the universe to back down. This is beyond historic.
Larry Johnson, a good friend of ours.
I mean, when you really think about it, it's a biblical David and Goliath story. And we're Goliath. We are fucking Goliath. Listen, I love the United States and I love the people and I love my people here. But we are a fucked up country. We are a sadistic, fucking disgusting terrorist country that meddles in everyone's goddamn business. And it's not even what we vote for. That is the thing that I keep trying to explain to my liberal friends about Trump. Like, whether you like Trump or not, or the things he's doing, he's a guy who was elected against every fucking protest of the established order. They tried to fucking kill the guy. Oh, it was staged. Sure. Okay. If it was staged, brilliant fucking scripting. Whoever came up with that. I don't believe it was staged. Other people were killed. Like, how do you explain that? Oh, they're fucking crisis actors. Now you sound like Alex Jones. But I believe that everything that I know and everything that I thought was, this is how it is, has been fucking bullshit. And just the fact that this administration was shaking things up and actually, following through on things where there's this massive pushback against illegal immigration for cleanup, for example. It's something that everyone has run on. But why is there this massive pushback? Why is there such a massive pushback on it? Because the companies and the money, the big money that rules our politics, they want the status quo because they're taking advantage of it. But a person like Trump he doesn't need their money, So again, I'm not saying that he's squeaky clean or anything, but he's at least less corruptible. And the same goes for someone like Elon Musk. There's all this stuff about Obama gave him the contracts he has, but I don't see, he's not doing the DOGE thing to try to funnel money to his own companies. He's trying to cut spending. So, the people are like, oh, why doesn't he cut his own spending? Well, maybe because he needs the money to build spaceships or the shit that he's actually doing for the government. It's this stuff is all complicated, but at the end of the day, we have been the bad guys for so long. And I do feel like even just it's about self-reflection, something the Democrats are not doing. And the Make America Great Again movement is about self-reflection. Like, hey, these wars we've seen, it's not good. The results are never good. Why do we keep doing? Insanity is doing the same thing, expecting different results, Anyway, let me let Pepe finish.
Who does the research says the United States spent over $1 billion. This is counting the 3 F-16s, which go from 78 to 80 million each.
Exactly.
Spent over $1 billion. Pete Hegseth was boasting about the success of doing it. Larry's right. Hegseth is wrong. And the president was humiliated.
Absolutely. And it didn't have to be this way, Judge. He was forced to, let's humiliate Yemen. No, now he's humiliated by Yemen in front of the whole planet. It didn't have to be this way. This is bad planning, bad management, and bad decisions.
So here's the other thing I think, as he says this, it's like there's the clip of Trump on Tim Pool saying, Biden right now, they're bombing Yemen. You don't have to do that. You could stop it with a phone call. I think, based on the events of the past couple months, what happened is Trump trusted his people and they swept him up into this and they did this and it was a massive failure. And then he looked at it and went, I was right. Why did I let them manipulate me into doing this anyway? This is obviously my own, me projecting my own internal stuff onto Trump. But again, I really believe that so many people have this misconstrued. And I say this a lot, but I feel like now that Trump is president, you're taking your information about what he's doing from the same people that tried to tell you that Joe Biden was, actually the president.
You're an anti-Semite.
What did you observe or conclude in your time in Tehran about Iran's preparedness, willingness, and ability to resist an onslaught, whether it comes from Israel alone or Israel and the United States?
And the trip hasn't finished yet, Judge.
All right. No, you're taking like 2 days from Tehran up to Moscow, so you can be there for the celebrations tomorrow, and it's
Exactly.
tomorrow there already, and then you're going back to Tehran.
Exactly. But answering your question, there were different instances. We had some outstanding conversations with Iranian analysts, with diplomats, with academics. We had a round table, for instance, that started at one of the Tehran's universities that started as U.S.-Iran relations. And after half an hour, it became a debate about the new great game that is being played all over in the geopolitical chessboard. And of course, there was that by now relatively well-known incident. We were visiting the IRGC Aerospace Museum.
Okay, so I want to show you what I think Trump's real motivation behind this, new unprecedented kind of attitude towards the rest of the world, the terrorist states, where it comes from, what his real motivation is for this. And this is a clip of a guy, his name is Trita Parsi, and he was on Kim Iverson's show. And listen to a little bit of what he has to say.
Well, the Israelis have done everything they can since the mid-1990s to prevent the US and Iran from even talking to each other, let alone striking a deal. And the Israelis completely miscalculated. They thought that Trump would allow them to go to war with Iran and support them full out. Now, he clearly has done that in Gaza. But that was also, we have to be fair, a continuation of what Biden already had put in place. Trump has made it worse in many different ways, but it's not a change in trajectory. It's an intensification and an acceleration of an existing policy.
So this obviously aired before the news started breaking that he was interested in recognizing a Palestinian state.
But on Iran, clearly, he's shown that this is he wants to go in a different direction. I mean, it's quite stunning. He summoned Netanyahu to the White House, didn't even tell him what the topic was, and didn't even tell him until he was in front of the cameras in the Oval Office that just 5 days later, the U.S. and Iran were going to have a meeting together. And
imagine Joe Biden doing that. Why don't you? Imagine Joe Biden calling Netanyahu to a press conference in front of cameras and announcing that he was going to have diplomatic relationships with Iran.
I want to talk to you.
You could see Netanyahu just being completely stunned. And then you had the decision just a couple of days ago in which he strikes a deal with the Houthis that only stops the Houthis attacking US, doesn't stop the Houthis from attacking Israel. He was even asked about it. What if the Houthis continue to attack Israel? He says, I don't care about that. So he has shown a remarkable, almost unprecedented willingness to say no to the Israelis compared to previous American presidents. And on something that he decides is important to him, which Iran is, but Gaza is not, unfortunately, he's shown the willingness to use his leverage and treat the Israelis in a way that they are absolutely not used to being treated by particularly American Republican presidents.
Yeah.
There you go. So I didn't get to the actual point of that was actually a lot of good stuff, but I think that this right here is the real reason that I think Trump is taking this kind of tack with these countries, and it's because of business. It's because of economics. So listen to this next clip.
After the revolution in 1992, they began negotiations with ConocoPhillips, and they struck a deal with them. And Conoco was about to go in and take over one of the biggest oil fields in Iran to develop it. And then Congress and the pro-Israel lobby intervened, and they got Clinton to issue 2 executive orders that not only killed that deal, but also killed the entire trade between Iran and the US, which at the time was at $4 billion.
I wonder if that happened amidst the Monica Lewinsky scandal, because there's a lot of new information that baby Monica Lewinsky was a little bit of a nop.
So oil, I'm sure, would be quick to go back in, but there's many other industries as well that could benefit from this. And again, at the end of the day, if he wants to say he got a better deal, this is an easy way for him to make a convincing case to the American public that it is.
All he has to do.
So economic reasons. And I'm just gonna play one more clip of Trita Parsi here talking about the Iran deal.
I think Trump's goal actually is quite clear. What is not clear is whether he has a strategy to get to his goal. His goal is a deal with Iran. I'm profoundly convinced that he's really looking for a deal. I think actually he was looking for a deal during his first term as well. I think I misjudged him a little bit on that. But he was sold a very, very problematic strategy designed to make sure that he didn't get a deal, and he fell for it. And this is part of the reason why he has not included the Boltons, the Pompeos, the Brian Hooks, and many of those people into his current administration. If you listen carefully to his messaging on this during the campaign, it was very disciplined. He wants a deal. His only red line is nuclear weapons, and he has no interest in regime change. And he kept on repeating that. He was not spending a lot of time bragging about killing Soleimani or talking bad about the previous nuclear deal. I mean, I'm sure he said it on a couple of occasions, but what he kept on going back to, I want a deal. The only red line I have is no nuclear weapons.
So I really think that he wants to open up Iran for business. He wants to open up trade with Iran, which is, again, why not? Well, as Trita just told you, the reason why not in the past is because a certain foreign entity that wields a lot of control in our government was like, no, you can't have diplomatic relationships with them. We are going to fucking attack them. And let's just cap this off with a nice little dainty, sweet frosting from your boys at Revolutionary Blackout Network. This sounds like Nick Cruz, actually. Donald Trump declared war on Yemen, and a few weeks later, he supports a Palestinian state. Common W for the Houthis. Well said. But again, I really do believe this all goes back to, economics. this is a guy who he's a businessman at the end of the day. You know, I know it sounds corny to say it that way, but this is why they hate him so much and that he was not allowed to be in this position, because he can't be manipulated in the same way that a typical politician can. He has money. They can't, it's like, oh, we'll give you $1 million, buddy. If you do this, we'll give you $1 million. He's like, I fucking got $1 million, man. I look at my fucking hotels and shit, you know? So that's the thing about Trump that gets lost on a lot of people. And I feel like we are so propagandized that everything is just, you know, hysteria, which brings us to our next segment, Elon Musk hysteria part 2. Elon is another one who 5 minutes ago, this guy was fucking made electric cars sexy and was launching rockets. And as soon as he's like, oh, he's the devil, he's the real president. Elon Musk is the real president of America. He's pulling Trump strings. And then Bernie Sanders and AOC are doing this oligarchy thing around Trump and Elon, because all of a sudden, you know, everything in America was fine until Trump came along and invented lying. You know, politics was great. And then Trump came and started lying, and the oligarchy. All of a sudden, when Trump got here, people started like buying influence in politics with money and stuff. Like it never happened before that. This is just a great kind of crescendo to the DOGE thing. And this is kind of like the DOGE swan song here. But recently, Elon announced that he's going to be kind of stepping out, which, if you were paying attention at all, they said from the beginning, the DOGE thing, remember when Vivek Ramaswamy was part of this? It was only supposed to last 6 months at most. And the thing about Elon is he's a tech bro. So he got in there and they work quick. And our government is so goddamn broken and backwards that it's not going to be difficult to find 1,000 different things you can make more efficient in like 5 minutes. You know, I played a clip a couple of weeks ago of Greg Gutfeld showing this website thing. They just wanted, on the IRS website, they wanted to move the login thing from like the middle of the page to the top corner. And the guy goes, oh, that'll take at least 100 days because we got to do this, this, and this. We got to get this work order. These guys are going to spend $1,000 paying a contractor who's going to pay $500 to a subcontractor to actually do it at some point. And it's like, why? And so they figured it out, and it was done in like 90 minutes or something. It's a simple change. But again, there are these established orders in place that this is a threat to. And so, of course, this is fascism. Fascism. Everything is fascism. It's like it's fascism.
You're an anti-Semite.
So I want to show you this. We're going to go back to our good friends, Matt Taibbi and Walter Kern, because I think this is another issue that they covered that a lot of people, I don't think, did and talked in depth about and made some really great points about. And that is Elon kind of making his exit from the Trump administration. There's a lot here. So, let's get into it.
Was it going to be finished my work, after which everybody would say, no, actually Trump hates him? Or was it going to be played out in some public way that would kind of take some of the resentment that he stirred and bleed it off, so that Elon suddenly looks like a guy who's a little bit of a victim of Trump's caprices and etc., and can go back to Tesla and say, it's okay to drive a Tesla again. I too had a fight with Trump.
Maybe, or it's just too super egotistical and also really weird, eccentric people clashing. Let's.
I will give Matt this. He has actually had a lot of personal interaction with Elon Musk. So I think he may be a better judge of Elon Musk than Walter.
Let's look at the ceremony. There was a meeting at which they had an awkward goodbye, and I mean this is like the K2 of awkward. This whole thing.
Now I want to say, this doesn't really seem that awkward to me. It seems kind of like pretty normal, actually. But you be the judge.
You know,
he's wearing two hats. Look at it.
You know, they say I wear a lot of hats, and as you can see, it's true. Even my hat has a hat.
Even my hat has a hat.
You know, the American people voted for secure borders, safe cities, and sensible spending. And that's what they've gotten.
In the first 100 days, as everyone has said, it's more than has been accomplished in any administration before, ever, period. This portends very well for what will happen for the rest of the administration. I think this could be the greatest administration since the founding of the country.
Well, we all want to thank you for your help. You really have sacrificed a lot. You've been treated very unfairly.
Well, they do like to rent my cars, which is not great. You know, it could be better.
But you have been treated unfairly. But the vast majority of people in this country really respect and appreciate you. And this whole room can say that very strongly. You've really been a tremendous help. You opened up a lot of eyes as to what could be done. And we just want to thank you very much. And, you know, you're invited to stay as long as you want. At some point, I guess, he wants to get back home to his cars.
See, I didn't think that was awkward at all. Trump goes, "You're invited to stay as long as you want, but at some point he wants to go back to his cars." Well, I mean, that seems pretty natural to me. Maybe I'm just
okay. All right.
So Matt,
Yep.
you know, I just don't want to offend everybody all the time, but I do have to say this. Was not the criticism of Elon that he was the real president?
Well, yes, of course.
Is he any longer the real president? Did they not defang the chief criticism of Trump that he was being run around by oligarchs by having Elon, who is always uncomfortable under the best of circumstances and seems self-conscious and
even
nervous.
when he's got the exact right pharmaceutical mix, it's
Right.
still awkward. Yeah.
So I'm only asking people to consider things on two levels. The level that we used to use back in the days of NBC News at 6 p.m. in 1977, and the new multifarious, multi-level, gamer-style social media world in which at 100 days, which is kind of when you would expect Elon to leave, like you would almost expect the deal.
I like the way he described the new media because it is very gamer. It's everything's based on feedback and chat and, you know, social media, and it's much different than the, you know, old political landscape.
Was, can you be around for the first 100 days? He leaves in an abashed way that removes completely the previous meme about him actually being Donald Trump's puppet master.
Right.
And now I can't say all these things are intentional. See, that's where people don't understand me. They think that I believe that everything is scripted and was thought in advance. But I do say, does this not solve a problem for both Elon and Donald? Donald isn't run by Elon, clearly. What's MSNBC going to say now that enemy number one, Elon Musk, was treated poorly by Donald Trump?
So I think let's look at
it. Kind of tracks back to the Pope thing. Like, you know, the people are like, "Oh, Trump's an ultra right wing religious guy who's going to take your abortion rights," and are now like, "Oh, he's not religious enough, and his pro life thing is watered down, and the Pope doesn't like him." They have no moral clarity. They don't believe in anything. It's all marketing. And if you don't, you know, follow along, you're a racist. misogynist, anti-vaxxer, or, not to beat a dead horse, but as Douglas
You're an
Murray would
anti-Semite.
Number 22 here. I think this is CNBC's commentary, if I'm not mistaken. Nope, it's Ali. Okay, let's hear what he has to say.
Freeze government spending is on hold.
Nothing that is being done. Nothing. It's actually making
Deport Elon protests.
life better for the American people.
Elon Musk has been a big part of the first 100 days across the 100 days, as you probably noticed. And now we have a special report on one of the most unprecedented parts of all this. The world's richest man reportedly now moving beyond daily government work. That's the plan. I'll explain that in a moment. But he did join the cabinet meeting today in a little bit of a different posture. If you think that body language matters, and in Hollywood and Washington, it certainly often does.
We're getting to a point here. I swear there's something good coming up.
In February, he was very big, standing over, almost lording over the meeting, bravado. Today, while
that's right,
he was seated. It seemed almost coordinated, as the president also made a point of praising Musk while hinting at his departure.
This whole room can say that very strongly. You've really been a tremendous help. You opened up a lot of eyes as to what can be done. And we just want to thank you very much. And, you're invited to stay as long as you want. And at some point, I guess he wants to get back home to his car.
Dude, you know who is really happy?
Little rocket science, you can kind of see what's happening. Special.
Let's pause it for a second. Mm-hmm.
The cabinet, which, Elon Musk in some ways has usurped attention from, if not actual power. So in the background, Trump's cabinet members, who have been kind of able to do a lot of positioning out of view, are now about to move into the foreground, much as Marco Rubio just has. In other words, the meme of the last week about Trump's adjutants is that Marco Rubio's taking over.
Right.
He's got 17 jobs. Okay, I'm going to give everybody a hint about what we just saw that they will think shows me to be crazy. Do you know what a hat on a hat means?
In football, it's like you're blocking the right person.
Do you know what it means in Hollywood?
No.
That you have so overmade your point that it's ridiculous. So a hat on a hat means like, I'm going to make this serial killer kick his dog before he kills somebody. And they go,
I see.
And they go, that's a hat on a hat. Have him love his dog before he goes out.
Right.
In other words, it is the word for a preposterous exaggeration that is unnecessary. And it signals, because Elon used the phrase, actually used it verbatim, that
no, he didn't use it verbatim. He said I wear multiple hats, or he's like, my hat has a hat. He didn't say hat on a hat. He's like, my hat has a hat or something.
There is an inside joke going on.
Do you think that Elon is privy to that inside joke?
A hat on a hat is probably, if you watch comedies about Hollywood scriptwriters and so on, the best known note that is given by studio execs. That's a hat on a hat.
He still looked pretty nuts though, with two hats on, one of them being Gulf of America and all that.
Dude, he's right. He looked too nuts. He had a hat on a hat.
He looks high, but go ahead. Yeah.
The guy who has been jumping up and down, exposing his stomach when he hits the apogee of his jumps at campaign stops is worried about looking bad. Come on. They got over that hump a long time ago.
That's true. Yeah, no, that train sailed.
Do you know how?
So that's an interesting point he's making there, which Elon is nerdy enough to know what that means and wear two hats for that reason. I think he might be onto something. However, the point that I love the most that he just made there is remember the narrative that, oh, Elon's the real puppet master. He's the one who's, because the reason he was turned into the demon is because he was the one who was really touching on what the actual source of all this is, which is the USAID, NED, all these like kind of cutouts that fund all these people so they all stay in line. And that's why he was the devil. And now he's going to be gone. So now what? Now, oh, like Walter said, now it's like, oh, now they suddenly sympathize with you. Oh, he had a bad experience with Trump too. That bad old Trump, when 5 minutes ago they were protesting him and calling for his deportation, you know? So I thought that was interesting. And I've said this, you know, multiple times about how he's not going to be there the whole, he's only going to be there for a few minutes. It's been 100 days. You know, originally I think they said DOGE was supposed to last 6 months, but here's, you know, my skepticism of the hysteria actually proving to be the right take. You know, it's a lot of this hysteria that people are kind of buying into about the things that Trump is doing is manufactured. And going back to, you know, our first piece about, maybe it wasn't the first one, but one of the earlier pieces we did tonight about how these protesters, these people getting arrested, and the, you know, the video of a baby being ripped out of a mother's arms or whatever. A lot of that is probably being, you know, enabled by people at the ground level who don't like Trump or are part, you know, get funding from one of these organizations or are, you know, establishment plans to like, okay, what can we do to like rally public outcry against this? Oh, let's go snatch a baby from a woman and make sure that everyone films it. You know, that is the kind of, and it's the same thing with Elon. He was the, you know, receptacle for all this kind of anger for the longest time. And now he's going to be gone. But while he was being that receptacle, other things were going on behind, like, as Walter was saying, the cabinet members were actually kind of pulling levers and doing things behind the scenes. So he almost kind of worked as a diversion for their anger in the short term. But to me, when they came in and one of the first things they did was go after USAID, that was massive, because those organizations, again, are what kind of keeps that, you know, permanent Washington machine in motion. And if you cut the legs out of that, it's going to be a lot harder for them. Now, keep in mind, and again, this is why I say to a lot of people, I'm like, give it this time. It's been 100 days. Give it a year. Give it 2 years. Even though they cut the funding from those organizations, who knows when the fiscal year ends? So they still have plenty of money to do the kind of shit they're doing now, and you know, exaggerate these incidents and make things look like it's insane when it's really just the same day-to-day shit that Obama, for example, was doing. It just wasn't put under a magnifying glass like it's being put under now. So I got 2 more segments for you before we wrap up. God, it's already been 2 hours. I get yapping on these motherfucking things and I just can't stop. So we're going to talk about NPR. Now, this is one of the cam girls that I probably simp for too much. Her name is Sandy, and she's a cute redhead. But she posted this thing about, I wanted to lead with this because she posted this thing about NPR. And I kind of was like, wow, you really don't know that much, do you? And she's, you know, I'm not dissing her because she's actually pretty intelligent politically, like more so than a lot of people. But she said, I grew up on PBS. I can't imagine a world without people having access. First of all, already you're in hysteria territory, because no one is saying that people aren't going to have access to PBS anymore. They're just talking about cutting government funding of it, which to me is like, why do we have government funded media anyway, especially in a world especially in the world we exist in today? It's unnecessary, really. And it's even more unnecessary when you really break down the funding sources of NPR. So let's get into this. Okay. So this is the first kind of part of this. And she said, she's worried about people not having access to PBS. And I said, you grew up in the era before it was corporate funded nonsense. The vast majority of NPR's funding comes from corporations. Actually, I was somewhat wrong about that. It's not the vast majority. It's about half. The other half comes from individuals, like donations, because they do those fundraiser drives and shit. And we'll get into the numbers in a minute, but I just wanted to make sure that I was being clear about. I was slightly off here. I'll be honest about that. They're every bit as bad as CNN or Fox News. That part is true. They just sound boring, so people attribute intelligence to that. Also true. So people ask, how much funding does NPR get from the government? NPR receives a small number of competitive grants from the CPB and federal agencies like the Department of Education and Department of Commerce. The funding amounts to less than 1% of their revenues. Okay? Keep that in mind as we continue here. So my good friend Willie Bragg, this is what really brought this to my attention as like being a thing, because Willie's a smart dude. And no offense to you, Willie, if you watch this, I'm just kind of using this as an example of what brought this to light. I don't think you're, I think you're well-intentioned. And so he said, Matt Taibbi, what the hell's happened to you? The only difference now between you and Dave Rubin these days is that you managed to retain a higher IQ. Ideologically, you've gone downhill. And again, Matt Taibbi hasn't changed, and he's right on this. And the thing that like really got me here, Willie, is you're quoting the Vanguard, okay? The Vanguard is smearing Matt Taibbi in the same way that they fucking smeared Jimmy Dore and Aaron Mate. These guys have a documented history of smearing the actual left. Not that Matt Taibbi is the actual left, but like smearing people who have genuine, things to say because they're DNC tools. As soon as they went after Aaron and Jimmy, I was like, these guys are fucking punks. So anyway, it goes back to what I was saying about the hysteria that's being ginned up intentionally. I guarantee you that these guys, if they're not getting money from like some kind of DNC third party, they're getting money from NED or one of those USAID funded agencies. All these people that talk like this you can see it so easy with the agents of a foreign country because they completely contradict themselves when it comes to certain issues. And you're like, wait a minute, like you're way smarter than this, Vanguard. Are you fucking kidding me, Matt Taibbi? You're a disgrace to the profession you claim to love and respect. No, you guys are fucking punk-ass little fake bitches. And Willie, man, do not listen to these guys. These guys are fucking... They already proved that they're fucking fakes. They went after Aaron Mate. Fuck the Vanguard. Seriously. And I mean that. Like, I'm sure they're nice kids and everything, but they're DNC hacks. They're Crystal and Kyle, when they were 15 or whatever. So what I thought we would do here is like kind of read a little bit of what Matt Taibbi was saying. I only have the preview. I don't pay for his Substack. Forgive me, Matt. I don't really have the resources to do that at the moment. But so Matt says, after reading Madame Bovary in college, I bought the unfinished novel Bouvard and I'm going to butcher that because I don't speak French. Pucachet. One of the last things Flaubert wrote. It's a furious satire about two bourgeoisie clerks with no ideas of their own who come into a fortune, travel the world and live through great events, and ultimately return home having learned nothing, despite seeing everything. In American terms, it's Dumb and Dumber for pseudo-intellectuals. I was too young to appreciate it. It was an older man's middle finger to the world's unrepentant stupidity, but there was a prize at the end. The Dictionary of Received Ideas, aka NPR, is often tacked to the back of the novel. It's believed Flaubert meant to publish it either as an appendix or as fictional creation of the book's two idiot heroes, whose conversations are just exchanges of cliches. In the long run, solitude is very sad, or the beautiful is the beautiful, the sublime is very beautiful. The dictionary is just a monster collection of these empty sayings, sometimes written as instructions on how and what to say in society, as in amusing must be attached to all remarks. How amusing. Heat, always unbearable. Like, people are like, isn't the heat unbearable? More often, entries explained what views to hold, dissection, and outrage against the majesty of death. Ice cream, it is dangerous to eat it. Legality, legality is killing us. With it, no proper government is possible. Interesting. That's something that was said on NPR. The woman, so that legality line, I just want to point this out. The woman in this picture right here, Catherine Marr, once said that free speech is getting in the way of us like doing what we want to do. Just like legality is killing us. Without it, no proper government is possible. Flaubert was nearly driven mad by these ear-piercing snippets of conventional wisdom. He said he wrote Bouvard and Pucachet to vomit back onto my contemporaries the disgust they inspire in me. To be trapped in a world of cliches would seem tyrannical enough to that kind of mind. But what if all those dead phrases and canned non-thoughts were mandatory? What if they were factory produced as part of a state enterprise? What if received ideas were dumped on the public with military regularity and in conjunction with prohibitions against saying anything else? See the parallels? From a Friday story about National Public Radio in the Washington Post, President Donald Trump signed an executive order on Thursday evening seeking to prohibit federal funding to NPR and the public broadcasting service. The order, which could be subject to legal challenge, called broadcasters' news coverage biased and partisan, which it is. An NPR spokesperson said early Friday that NPR's editorial practices and decision-making are independent and free from outside influence. The zany sociality Prof on Molly vibe at NPR is no longer the big story in America. Donald Trump's unprecedented assault on our most fundamental rights is just ask NPR, which of course is the problem. Once a great American institution, NPR has become a state-sponsored version of Flaubert's nightmare. And then he goes on to go into greater detail as to why it needs to go. But I want to keep going here into the weeds a little bit because this guy breaks things down a little bit. He says, and what's funny about this is you see a lot of actual liberals arguing like, what? NPR isn't state-funded media. They barely get any money from the state. Then why do we pay for it? They'll be fine. They will continue to exist without state funding. But Kyle here says, if you look at NPR's own website, it admits that federal funding is essential to its core operations because a large part of its revenue comes from the fees it charges member stations. So I think he's putting essential in quotes there to point out that, like, look at this chart, which we'll get into in just a second. These member stations are funded directly by the government. So hold on a sec. If you look at this chart here, what he's basically kind of showing you in this breakdown is how it's kind of hard to see the red line, but the first, if you look at the kind of the top, the chart of the top, the longest line at the very top, this little red line, 43% is individuals. So that's apparent. That's the largest portion of NPR's revenue is people contributing. The second largest at 16% is corporations who donate. And then number 3 is colleges and universities. And then you have, I think it's, what does it say? Investments in other foundations, federal So, and then the last 2 lines are the actual government funding. Federal appropriations via the CPB and federal, state, and local governments. So the vast majority of NPR's funding comes from individuals. So people that want to have their, personal politics reflected back at them. And the second largest is corporations who want to control the narrative on these stations. So, again, just to hammer this point home, removing government funding from NPR is going to change nothing, but also it's kind of trash. And that's kind of what I said to Willie. And so just to kind of finish this out, this is just another guy showing you the kind of left-leaning take on this. He says NPR receives approximately 0.6% of their funding from federal grants. The vast majority of their funding comes from corporate sponsors and donations. To label it as government funded is total BS. Yeah. But also no. Because the CPP, it's still a part of their budget. So they're definitely a lot more inclined, at least on the surface, to carry the government's narrative than, say, someone who isn't. I don't take any government money, and therefore I don't feel any vested interest in defending the government. I'm very critical of it, as you can tell. In fact, I don't take any money at all because no one's paying me to do this. I do this because I feel like it. So that does it for the NPR thing. And we're going to wrap up tonight by talking about your hero and mine, Kanye West. Now Kanye just recently released a new song. And let's go to the Jerusalem Post for their take on this new track by Kanye. It says Kanye West releases Heil Hitler song featuring audio clip of Nazis leader's speech. The music video for Heil Hitler depicts a group of black men in formation singing Ninja Heil Hitler multiple times. The men are wearing animal skins and heads. So I'm not going to obviously play the song. But here's the thing that kind of hit me about this. If you want to hear what a white guy who's not a Nazi happens to think about Kanye, a black man song who is, allegedly or kind of, I don't know, what's the word I could use, seemingly promoting Nazis. I don't think that's really what he's doing, especially if you actually listen to what he's saying in the song. He's talking about how business people ruined his life and took his kids away from him, and how those people happen to be of a certain religion. And then he goes on to say, so now I'm the villain, all my ninjas, Nazis, ninja, Heil, the guy. Catchy song, by the way. So, to keep going here, Paul M. Davis here says, and this is kind of where my take on this is really emanates from, but he says, if Ye subbed Hail Satan for Hail Hitler, the music industry would make the song the biggest hit of the summer. That's the truth about the Luciferian death cult that runs the music industry. And listen, I think that these people get a little too caught up in the spiritual mythology of things like demons and angels and Jesus, and all that shit is a human construct. But I think this guy's onto something in the sense that when I was a kid, the satanic panic was a big thing. And the worst thing you could do is praise Satan, which is why bands like Slayer exist. But then even if you didn't praise Satan, they would, if they didn't like you or they wanted to dethrone you or someone wanted to go after you, they would say that you were saying Satan's shit backwards in your songs. So I liken this whole white supremacy Nazi thing to that era in a lot of ways, because people are accused of shit all the time without any viable evidence. And Kanye is a black man. So him coming out and saying this is obviously one of the things he's good at, is stirring the pot. But he's also kind of pointing out that this is the last third rail. This is the one thing that you're not allowed. If you say it, people will fucking take you off. They'll debank you. They'll censor you. And, if we truly live in a free country, People should be able to say whatever they want, even if it's detestable things like Heil Hitler. Now, does he mean it? Do you really think Kanye West is a Nazi? You really think Kanye West is a white supremacist? Come on. That's why he's doing it, because it exposes these people. And I mean, the amount of people that came out Karening when this dropped, oh my God, Kanye wants to kill all the Jews. It's like, dude, really? Are you that? You're going to, and that's what I said, something to the effect of the emotional Karen response to the song is better than the actual song. The way that people freaked out and, lost their minds over this is better than the actual song. But I want to go a little bit deeper than that even, because a lot of black leaders were accused of being anti-Semites. And I'm not saying Kanye is a black leader at this point. I don't know many black people that are fucking with Kanye because of this kind of shit. I'm like, did a lot of people ditch Judas Priest and Ozzy when they were accused of Satanism? I mean, probably some, but But I want to show you this clip of a black leader kind of exhibiting a sentiment that is just relevant to this story. And enjoy.
Who run these whiskey stores that get you drunk. It is Jews that run these old rundown stores that sell you bad food. It is Jews who control the economy of power and use it for themselves and for the benefit of Israel. And that's dumb enough to walk around here joining some NAACP or CORE and think we're going to be blind to what they're doing to us. No, someone better pull
You're an anti-Semite.
Someone better pull their coat before you start pulling some heads.
He kind of sounds like Obama, but more animated. I know Obama kind of like sounds like a slower Malcolm X.
That's not anti-Semitic, that's just plain intelligence. You know, I was on a program here in New York on Channel 13, in which I made a statement concerning how the Jews control about 80% of the economy in most Negro communities across the country. And the Jews organized themselves and wouldn't let their thing come back on Channel 13. It was two interviews. One was done by Baldwin and one was done by me. The one I did two. One was short and one was a 30-minute duration. And at the end of it, you remember Morgenthau jumped up and said that he's not responsible for anything I said. Well, I can understand why he said that, because during that same week, the same old so-called liberal Jews who claim they believe in free speech and all that old kind of stuff, they got together and prevented the showing of that interview again, simply because I had made the statement on that the Jews are the ones who are robbing us and exploiting us up here in Harlem and across the country. Jews believe in censorship more than anybody else. All you got to do is start talking about Jews, and you'll find all the papers will close up on you.
So Malcolm X has this quote that I've always loved, and it's something to the, I'm going to butcher it, but he says something to the effect of, if you believe the papers, they'll have you hating the oppressed and loving the oppressor. And I think that quote is more relevant than ever. But I just wanted to kind of make that parallel there, because I think it's a relevant one. And I'm not saying that Kanye West is anywhere near the level that Malcolm X was. One of the biographies I read in my life is Malcolm X's biography. And it's honestly one of my favorite books. And I highly recommend that if you haven't read it or listened to the audio, that you check it out, because it's a very fucking fantastic story about a guy who, you kind of understand his racism against white people as a white person. You know, the opening part of it is about how the KKK murdered his father by laying him on railroad tracks. You know, like, if someone did that to my father, I would spend the rest of my life, hating them or, looking to extract vengeance. So you kind of understand the perspective of a person like that. But then as the book progresses, it's a redemption arc, because, he starts out as like a drug dealer, and he's kind of like, he's saved, like he's kind of fucking with this dude's wife, and he gets arrested, and you know, they put like, if he hadn't been arrested, he probably would have been murdered by that guy who he was messing with his wife, because the dude was kind of like onto him. And so in jail, he reads all these books and becomes this like really smart, like he educates himself. And when he gets out, he takes the Nation of Islam and he gets out in the streets and like through grassroots organizing, builds the Nation of Islam into this massive organization. And it's really built on his back, you know? And through this whole story, he hates white people until he goes to Mecca and he meets a white Muslim who takes care of him. And then he goes, wow, I've been wrong about this, you know, my whole life. So it's an interesting story. And then of course, you know, he's still a militant guy, like saying the kind of thing he's saying here. And he eventually is assassinated. But that's pretty much all I've got for tonight. I'm going to run to the comments real quick. There's a couple here. Truth violates, bro, you've never experienced a ghost or some shit? I don't believe in ghosts. I believe they're a figment of your imagination. However, that's not to say, I mean, I shouldn't say that completely. You ever watch those paranormal shows? Like, they're so fake. My ex, I had a girlfriend who was like way into those like paranormal TV shows on fucking Learning Channel or whatever, and it was so staged. And I'm just like, look, it's not that I don't believe in spiritual world and like a higher plane of existence and all that, but like the idea that like ghosts would just come to like fucking fuck with you or scare you, it's all imagined to me anyway. Yeah. And I mean what I said about that book, like if you've never, I listened to the audio version of it. It's actually narrated by Lawrence Fishburne, but man, probably one of my favorite biographies I've ever listened to. He is great. He's one of those dudes. Hey, listen, again, it's like, I'm not denying that there are spiritual presences and all that kind of stuff, but like, I think too many people kind of take advantage of the ghost thing. Like you see all these like ghost tours and shit, and it's like most of it is fucking fake bullshit. 99.9% of it is fake bullshit. That said, like, yeah, man, like I've been in a place and felt like a presence that guided me or, you know, pushed me towards something. You know, there are multiple levels of existence, man. There are multiple dimensions. And I don't deny the existence of a spirit world or, you know, that kind of, what's the word you want to use? Like plane of existence beyond reality, right? I'm not that fucking rooted in, you know, the standard analog world, digital world, whatever you want to call it. Anyway, thank you all for sticking around tonight and listening to me rant. Saturday nights might be the night that I jump on from now on because Sundays are a work day now. But I like that too because, you know, at least if I do this on a Saturday night, my homies that, you know, we're jumping on Sundays, when they wake up tomorrow, they can enjoy this stream. And I actually spent some time. I think this puts me in a position too where I can spend some real time putting something together that's not just me kind of stumbling through some shit. I'm actually like doing some research and putting some clips together. I think the shows are always much better. At least, you know, I enjoy doing it much more when I have some real substance and something to walk through. Whereas sometimes I'll just jump on and be like, oh, check this out. Here's a clip that I'm streaming off YouTube. And then my connection's bad. Where if I really take the time, spend a couple hours and put it all together and, you know, really plot it out, it's much more fluid, much more entertaining, I think, much more rewarding for me and hopefully the audience as well. But that's all I got for y'all tonight. I got mad love for y'all. If you haven't liked and subscribed, do all that shit. I don't say that enough, but what I do say is I figure if the content's good enough, most people will do that anyway. So I got love for y'all. And usually I try to end on something funny, or pull up one of my clips, but I think I did enough tonight that maybe I'm just gonna play my Necro remix and be out of here. No, I'm not gonna play the Necro remix. It's all out there. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next week, y'all. Take good care of yourselves and hit me in the comments. And we'll see you next time. Peace.